For the best Italian food in Western New York, Elliot Apollo's, call 716-825-3675. The Lardon Construction Group.
Fubo TV, the official streaming service of Do Champions. FanDuel, the official sportsbook of Do Champions.
For all your summertime needs, beauty pools, as well as kayak pools.
CX Chronicles, your total customer solutions focused manager. W.GG, the official energy drink of Do Champions.
Hey, Sons of Erie, our artwork looks better on your walls. Hamburg Brewing, please visit our tap room on Boston State Road, Hamburg, New York. And finally,
Fat Boy Surf Club for all your surfing needs.
All right, and welcome into another morning edition of Do's Hockey Hotline. I am your host, Matt Diegert, and as always, I have Beyond716. Brian, how are you this morning? How is it going in California?
It's going good. It's going good. It's a nice cold morning here, and February 1st is here. Sadly, no more Bills football, but we pivot to the Sabres the rest of the season. So,
no more sports in Buffalo. I got it.
So no more sports till first pitch of baseball season.
No, we're only kidding here,
Yeah,
but let's start with something great before we get into everything else with going on with the Sabres. What happened last night? They actually did a wonderful job with Rob Ray's ceremony. Welcoming in Rob into the Hall of Fame, bringing all those guys back. It was great seeing Ryan Miller in the building last night. Seeing Barnaby actually be here in the Sabres, in a Sabres jersey again was awesome. Hearing some of the stories that Rob Ray was telling about Matthew Barnaby and during his speech about his love-hate relationship with him when he hated him and threw him out his condo window and things like that. So it was
Amazing.
It was good. It was a good time, good speech, good time had by all. It was definitely a good thing to watch. It was a little upsetting that they didn't fill the building for Rob Ray, but it definitely. I understand it to a point because the Sabres aren't winning. They're not putting a great product on the ice, and they're not making it. Even though they won last night. And we'll talk about Yuri Kulik a little bit. We'll talk about what happened last night. We'll talk about what happened this week throughout the show.
Yep.
We'll also talk about some of the trades that happened last night in the NHL, and what that kind of means for the Sabres. So, Brian, let's kind of let's get off this great stuff and kind of get into the bad stuff. First and foremost, welcome to the Buffalo Hall of Fame to Rob Ray. But with that being said, one person that probably won't ever be in the Buffalo Sabres Hall of Fame, Kevin Adams. It's unfortunate because when he first came in the league, and I was having we had chat on last week. We were talking with him a little bit about trades and things to make this team better and everything else. And I was having a little bit of a disagreement with him on online, and I understood his point, and he understood my point. But when it comes down to it, this is truly on not making this team better is truly on Kevin Adams. It's the same thing that and we do it all the time on the show, and we always say we hate it, but at this point, Brandon Beane sat up there for an hour and a half taking questions and basically saying, the only thing that he can do to make that football team look better and get over that Kansas City hump is look in the mirror and what he's got to do better and what he can do better to improve the Buffalo Bills.
Yep.
Kevin Adams hasn't done anything. When he first got hired and he made the trade for Eric Stahl and he brought in Taylor Hall and everything like that and everything that he put together for that team during COVID, it was like, okay, maybe we got something here. Maybe we got somebody who's going to take some swings and put some contact on the ball and they might, all the moves might not be home runs. Some of them might be foul outs. But when it comes down to it, it truly is. It's upsetting because this once great franchise is going on their 14th year, and I would probably venture to guess that it's probably going to be a 14th year with no playoffs, no chance at even getting into the dance and seeing what happens. because you know once you get in there, all like we say all the time with in football, just get in, just get in. Everything is 0-0 at that point. Just get in, right? So it comes down to it, and he hasn't even gotten in, and now he always says, oh, it's a 14-year playoff drought or a 13-year playoff drought, and I've only been here for 5 years or 4 years or whatever. I only own 4 years of it. You now own 5 years of it. You're getting up almost to 50% of what the drought is as a general manager, and you can almost say almost just under half of it is now your responsibility, and you've done nothing to improve this team other than make some questionable draft picks and bring in a Jordan Greenway back in 2022 when you had a chance to, get over that hump and really, make not necessarily a splash move, but do something that brings somebody in that can help this team get over the hump, and you haven't done a single thing.
Yep. Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. And the other thing too, Matt, is 5 years is a very long time in the professional sports world, right? And professional, like you said about Brandon Bean, I've always loved his kind of, I mean, listen, he doesn't give you everything, right? But what he does give you is he gives you that heart and passion that, that he really cares. I think some of what Kevin Adams said is not wrong necessarily. I mean, there are limitations with no trade clauses. There are limitations with the market. We understand that. And he could acknowledge that, but also come back with, hey, I understand, this is frustrating and I understand there are things, but we're doing everything we can to make this team better. And the other thing I think that hurts him, Matt, and this is something we've talked about a lot, he doesn't have experience around him, right? It's almost like Kevin Adams says, almost like this by design. Like he wants to be the sole voice for Terry, right? He's a yes guy for Terry, and Terry likes that, right? So he's kind of feeding Terry all this information, and he's saying, the answers in the room, et cetera, et cetera. The Sabres just need some experienced guys around Kevin to say, hey, Kev, maybe help him along the way, be that facilitator in the room, maybe in those trade rooms, right? Let's say they're trying to bring a trade home and the other thing that frustrates me, Matt, we've talked about this a lot. It's not even so much the trades. We've had some good players dangling in the wind out there. Arthur Kaliev came into the Rangers and kind of sparked them. Could have been signed. Wasn't done. Brandon Saad was out there. Nice player. A lot of experience. So won a lot in this league. Would be a nice person to add to, like we did for Jason Zucker. We saw what Jason Zucker has done. We need another one. There's defensemen out there like that. We need a rugged third defenseman. We need a guy that could be a presence, maybe help Owen Power along the way. Owen Power's got a lot of talent, but he needs some guidance, right? These are small things that it doesn't take mountains to make happen, right, Matt? There's plenty of options out there, and his inaction on those almost frustrates me more than the big fish, because we know the big fish are tough in this league to make. Now, we're going to get to other things as to why I think that could change, but yeah, I think what you're saying has a lot of weight. In 5 years in pro sports is not a, good job, Kevin. You're really trying, great job. It's not like, little league sports or minor league sport. This is the major leagues. This is the top. It's results. And if he's not getting it done, I don't want him to be the architect of this team as the cap goes way up and we have way more options at our disposal.
Well, and that's the thing that it comes down to. Why is it that you can get rid of a coach, at the end of a year, as a general manager? Why can you get rid of a coach that, in Don Granato that's potentially, yes, we all agreed that he deserved to be, let go, and they have to do something to get over the hump and everything else and get in the playoffs and everything like that. But why is it that, they reassess the coaches, but Kevin Adams is still here?
Yeah.
But because at some point he's now been through, this is his third coach that he's been through in Lindy Ruff. And at some point it's got to be, the product that is being put on the ice is on the general manager, not on what the coach does, because you can put, the team around that he needs, that Lindy Ruff needs to succeed. And if you're not doing that, Lindy Ruff can just sit on the bench and throw his hands up and did what he did in his after game press conference a couple weeks ago and say, I have no idea what's going on. I have no idea how to fix this. Because he can't be the one that goes and fixes it with what's on the ice. And when you literally have, a team like Vancouver that, we know that the Pettersson deal was either him or JT Miller, because Kevin Adams can't get over the hump and can't make the big move when it needs to happen. You see a JT Miller trade go through for the Rangers, and he goes back to the. I'm not saying that we want a JT Miller or anything like that. Please don't take it that way. But with a 1C that you desperately need for this team that can slot in and then move everybody down, because I think that you put a Pettersson on a top line, even if you move Kulich down to that 2C role, because we all see the talent, we all see everything that Kulich has, that he potentially will be. He's still not at that point where he's a 100-point player, 110-point player, where you need somebody like that in your top line, where you go get a Elias Pettersson, and he instantly comes in and is a point a game player, is something that can facilitate offense around him. You've now moved Tage Thompson to the wing, so put Tage Thompson on that wing with Pettersson, and have Peterka on the other side, or for this year. But guess what? He's signed for 7 more years. So when it comes down to it, you can literally go and start building pieces around that 1C, knowing that you have a good spine down the middle in Pettersson, in Kulich, in McLeod, and then in Kozak on the fourth line. That's a pretty good spine if you look at it. Now, because you don't have, I'm going to be a little crass here, because you don't have the balls to go out and make the move, and we talked about it while we were getting ready for the show this morning. Is we all hate those the scumbags scam calls or telemarketer calls or anything like that, or the used car salesman. But what do? That they keep at it. They keep going and they keep pushing, and it finally comes down to it. What can I do to put you in this vehicle today? Or what can I do to, get this deal done? Yeah. Where was that? Maybe, and we're not, inside that room. Maybe that was said, and maybe we're being a little bit critical, a little bit harsh of it. And it's something that Kevin Adams, didn't want to do. Maybe they wanted, Owen Power instead of a Bowen Byram, or they wanted, an unprotected first rather than. But guess what? They traded JT Miller and got a protected first back. At some point, you have to take these swings, and you have to make contact on the ball, and you have to continue. You have to try to build. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But guess what? You're trying, and your job, it doesn't seem like his job is on the line, but like we always say, next year isn't guaranteed. If he doesn't get something done during the trade deadline to make this team better, guess what? Your job isn't guaranteed into next year. I'm not saying his seat is hot or anything, but it should be. It should be on fire. Yeah. It should absolutely be on fire.
Yeah, it should be blazing hot. At this point, and Matt, if we isolate this Pettersson discussion, right, and he couldn't get it to the finish line, it's not like if Kevin Adams made a couple more trades over the last 5 years and he was able to successfully get some things done, I don't think we'd be looking as negatively at this morning. It's kind of like a byproduct of all the things that have added up over the last 5 years, right? It's like on its own, maybe he really did try to get Elias Pettersson. Maybe they were a lot closer than we realized. We don't really know all the details in the room, but I guess, it's because of the results we've had, the lack of the playoffs. And really, I mean, we talk about 14 years, Matt, at this point, I'm not even sure if we're going to get in the playoffs next year.
Right.
And let's just be honest, we do have some nice young players, but you look at the Eastern Conference, right? You look at, if anybody's paid attention, Detroit, since they hired McLennan, they're like 13-4-1. Columbus is on fire. Montreal's moving up the ladder. You got, there's a lot of good teams in the East. Ottawa has taken that next step that we thought we were taking, right? So there's a lot of competition there that I'm not sure we're ready for that yet, even next year. And I hate to be that sombering voice this morning in that sense, but that's just reality. It's, there's a lot of good teams coming up towards the top that we thought we would be.
And it comes down to it. And sometimes with the player remaining on their team is sometimes worse than them getting traded somewhere else.
Yeah.
Because it just shows that you didn't do enough to entice them to make that trade. You know, so it just really kind of, it's upsetting. And, I don't know at this point what has to be done to make this team better. As far as, maybe it's not moving off of Kevin Adams. Maybe it's maybe it's not moving off of Lindy Ruff. Maybe it is. I don't know. I mean, we saw Pagula get the backed up into McDermott and Bean and got lucky with that combination. So it just, maybe he hasn't gotten lucky with Kevin Adams or anything like that. And I hate making these shows that we do about Kevin Adams like hate fest, but because he has done some good things, but when you can't get the big one over the top and make a move that makes this team a playoff contender right now, there's no reason why you shouldn't be here, or why you should be here.
Yeah, absolutely. And we all need the need for a true one center on this team is massive, right? I mean, we have some good players. Beyond's commitment to waking up. Yeah, listen, that's what we do around here, right? And we do it for everybody here. So thank you, Stu. I appreciate, thank goodness for high octane coffee and sunshine here in California. That's the thing that only gets me going. So, but I look around the league, right? Matt, you look at some of these other teams that have those one centers, like Columbus has Fantilli, right, as an example. Right, we don't like Nick Suzuki on Montreal. I'm not even giving you franchise-changing guys, right? Macklin Celebrini, we've talked about him with San Jose. You see the energy. Now, San Jose hasn't hit that stride yet, but you see the energy he brought to that franchise, right? We have good players, but just like we said, imagine what a top 1C would do to move everybody else into better positions. I love Alex Tuck. I don't feel he's a first-line player. I'm sorry. I think he's a second-line player, which – He does a lot of great things, shorthanded. He does all the little things that I love about Alex Tuck, but he's not a top line player. I'm sorry. He would be so much better off if we moved him down or we moved guys around. And you see how much more comfortable Tage looks on the wing, right? Which make him comfortable. Utilize, maximize his ability, and for the rest of the year, let's just keep Kulich there and see what he does. Let's just see what we're looking at the end of the season, because the rest of the year we know we're not making the playoffs, so we just need to assess what we have. So listen, it's complicated. Being an NHL GM is tougher, I think, than even an NFL one in terms of trades, because there are those roadblocks but the problem is it's the way Kevin Adams smugly answered those questions. I still come back to that, and that the tone and the way he was is sort of like, how dare you even challenge me? Like, yeah, it's about palm trees and taxes or whatever. You know what I mean? He's just, and I think that's the tone that, the Sabre organization has just. We all know there are fans hiding in the weeds right now, right? Western New York better than me, Matt. Right? You know if this team, started catching fire and had that passion in the building, and fans will come back in droves. Buffalo fans are great fans. We love hockey. We really, really do. Rob Ray night 20 years ago, you wouldn't be able to get a ticket for that game.
Correct. You wouldn't be able to get in the building for what you could have gotten in the building for last night.
Was there bad weather last night up there too? Did I hear that correctly? There wasn't even bad weather. So, it wasn't like horrible, right?
Right. No, absolutely not.
Yeah. So that, that's something else too. But even if there was bad weather, they would still try to make that game, right? In the old days, in the 90s and 80s and mid 2000s. And they would definitely find a way to make that happen. So, but where do you find that It's like, we're not going to make this a Bills thing where we talk about them finding a franchise defining defensive player, right? Where do you find that in the NHL? Where do we find that number one center? That's the toughest job to do, but that's Kevin Adams' job.
Right.
And that's what you're ultimately judged on. And there's no, like we said, no pats on the back. Say, great job, Kevin. You're really trying. No, that's not how it works in pro sports. And 5 years for me is enough. If he's not the guy for this, if he can't bring that kind of trade home, then it's time to move on. It's that simple. And I need an experienced, savvy general manager, and Pegula may have to overpay for it, but he's got to be willing to do it, and he's got to be willing to let that person make that change.
Yeah. No, and I do agree. And the Sabres right now, whether or not, like, not even speaking on next year yet, if he cannot make moves and show that he has, like, a pulse by the trade deadline, there is no reason that he should last through one more year. He should not get a sixth year. I don't care if they keep Lindy Ruff or get rid of him, like, at this point. Like, yeah. I don't care if they're intertwined or anything like that, but get somebody in here that you're going to trust that's going to make these moves to make this team better. Do we trust that Kevin Adams is going to do anything by the trade deadline? I don't have trust in that. I don't have trust that he's going to make a single move that's going to be, especially after the whole Pettersson stuff. Not speaking on anything else he could have done, whether it's Ehlers, whether it's Nikas, whether it's Chikrin a couple years ago, anything like that. Like, there's the Sabres are slated to have $33 million in cap space next year, with most of the team signed. I don't trust him to spend that money. That's like giving the maid, $300 and say go get groceries for the week. I don't trust that the things that I want in my fridge are going to come back. So it's upsetting to a point. Like, and we sit here as fans, as content creators, as whatever else, and we sit here and have to, be critical on these guys and everything like that. So we don't get to see, like, the sausage being made, right? And how those things are coming to fruition and how they're, being viewed on the inside and things like that. And we got to realize, not as fans, but as when it comes down to it, we have to sit here and we have to understand that sometimes things don't get done, and there's two sides to every story, right? Or three sides to every story. Right. the side from Vancouver, the side from the Sabres, and what actually happened.
Yep.
When you can't get those things done, that's on the Buffalo side. Because it didn't get done. You have to go out, and you want a certain player, you want a certain thing, you have to go out and aggressively get that. You have to do whatever you can, and if you have to add an extra piece or something like that to get it over the top to entice them to do it, fine. Like, but at this point, you're not doing anything. You're not doing a goddamn thing to do anything, and you haven't even tried on the waivers side of things.
Yep.
Guys that are free, that are not going to cost you any draft picks or anything other than the salary cap space that's been sitting there since you bought out Jeff Skinner.
Yep. Absolutely. And then the other thing is, now that Vancouver, that may be a dead deal now. They made those trades yesterday. They made their decision. Like, who else is out there that may be willing to part with what we really need, right? And, it's pretty slim pickings out there, Matt. When
somebody's available, you have to go get them.
Yep, absolutely. Now, if I were Kevin Adams, if I were sitting, in his office, and if he wanted my advice, I would look at a team out west. Okay, there's another team that is floundering in the standings that has two excellent centers making a lot of money, both making $8.125 million. Okay, they both are void of no movement clauses until next year, very similar to Elias Pettersson. What if I told you we get a Robert Thomas or Jordan Kyrou from St. Louis? St. Louis is in 50 points. They're looking like maybe they might be ready for a little bit of a rebuild. They're having a tough year. Like, those are the kind of things I want to hear that Kevin Adams is trying to do. Like, Robert Thomas is a phenomenal playmaking center. Like, you put him with Tage Thompson, he could just feed him the puck all day long. Like that. I know he's not Elias Pettersson, but that's the kind of, again, just that little injection into this franchise, right? To show the fans that you care, right? B, that that you're trying to win. We're not worried about the cap. I mean, okay, the guy makes $8 million the next 3 years. Who cares? I mean, the cap is accelerating. That thing's going to be paid for in 2 years, right? So, and maybe that's another team that the Sabres really go hard. I would go hard after them, considering the lack of movement clauses. Again, those are hard things to find. Those are two. I would pay a lot for Kyrou. I love Jordan Kyrou, but I'm not sure if they would move him. But Robert Thomas is 25 years old. I mean, he's a guy you could build around. I would move, really good assets on this team. Yeah. No problem. I mean, we'll make it happen. So I've just been kind of scouring some teams, but we just hope that maybe there's some hope out there. But I'm not even sure if these guys are on the market. But I'm just trying to identify teams where, hey, that's our pressing need. That's what we need. And like you said, you can move Kulich to the second line, and then you have your top guy, and it moves. Oh, it would just be. This team is a lot closer than people think, Matt. They really are. I know it's hard to see, but it is.
Well, and it comes down to it. It's almost like the you may understand this. Some people watching may not, but it's almost comes down to almost like the Derek Roy effect, right? Yeah. We all were like, oh, he's not doing anything. He's not doing anything, and then all of a sudden he gets playing time on like the first and second line, and they use him as their top center after Drury and Briere left. And he's putting up points, and he's putting up goals, and he's doing, who's to say that you don't put a Robert Thomas or a Jordan Kyrou in that position? If those guys were available, who's to say that those guys with the more playing time, playing with better players, wouldn't, flourish and succeed and become a 1C that you potentially need and be the point per game player or 100-point player that, you typically want from a 1C. So it really comes down to the simple fact that it truly is, the theme of the show today is disappointment and being upset. And, I don't know what else to say about it, because it's infuriating, because like the Sabres were the start of my love for sports, I was, I say it all the time. I was on the ice from when I was, 3 years old. And it's watching Sabres games at the Odd, being in the Oranges, being, going up those, going up like this and watching games as a child and catching a stray puck because the nets aren't there. And it's just upsetting. And we say it all the time on here that, our main job on this network is talking about the Bills. But we are a Buffalo sports network. But again, we're more fans of hockey than we are knowing about it. But we do have some knowledge about these things. And when it comes down to it, we sit here and can banter back and forth about this. But until something is truly done to make this team better, to make to end this drought, we're gonna just sit here and keep spinning our wheels and spinning the wheels and kind of talking about the same thing over and over again, because it's like the Sabres, they win 2 in a row, and then they have a bad game because they have that mental lapse for a period, and they lose because they let up 4 goals in that period and are now down 4-2. Like, it kind of felt that way last night against Nashville.
They almost did it again. Yeah,
they were up 2-0, and then it was 2-2, and then it was 3-2, and then we tied it on that Jason Zucker, that beautiful pass from I think it was Dahlin, right?
Yes, really
that beautiful pass from Dahlin, and the tip in from Zucker, and it made it 3-3, and then with like 2 minutes left or 3 minutes left, Kulich scores to make it 4-3, and they ended the game there, and it just. That's the type of team that you need to. This team, like that's what it is in the NHL. You're not going to score 5 goals a night. You know, they have to battle through these things and hold teams to 2 to 3 goals and be able to put up 4, be able to put up 3. You know, enough of this 1 goal and oh great, you did great on the ice. And at this point in the season, like as much as we're trying to bring content by having people like Chad on or anybody else that deals in the analytics, at some point analytics have to go out the window, because. Oh, great! You had a great expected goals for, but if you don't put the puck in the net, then it doesn't matter.
Yep. Yeah. The other thing is, I compare the Sabres to those teams in the NFL that aren't that great, but sometimes you watch maybe their first couple drives and they're scripted nice and they get off to a pretty good start. But once the other team adjusts, and the Bills are famous for this, right? Usually the first drive we kind of adjust after that, and then those teams make. That's how I feel like the Sabres are, right? It's almost like when they get up 2-0, I'm kind of afraid now. I'm like, what's going to happen, right? Yeah. And as good as they look, but amidst the darkness of this team, there are positives. Again, I know it's hard to see, but I'll tell you what, that first Yuri Kulik goal last night, and I tell everybody here to go watch it. That is a big boy elite shot. I mean, that thing was. I was like, wow. And I don't know if you heard what Darlene said after the game. He said he thinks he's going to be a superstar in this league now.
Yeah.
Again, he's a player, but it's just good to hear those things that maybe Kulik could be that guy. But the Sabres, the thing is this fan base, and the Sabres need to be patient with Yuri Kulik. He's showing signs, but we just got to know he's 20 years old, right? He's going to have those ebbs and flows to his game. And it's just – and listen, I still believe, Matt, if you moved off of Matthias Samuelsson, who's driving me crazy, right? And you find a partner. Listen, Kevin, overpay to make someone take that $4 million. And you're saying, well, that's hard to do. The cap is accelerating at a very high rate the next few years. If you give someone enough reason to do it, they'll do it. And if you get a rugged, like a Racco Gudis, a Jacob Trouba who we spoke about, right? Someone like that, you put him in there. I'm telling you, those little things there. And if you get another veteran winger like a Zucker, right? Just to kind of show these kids on the ice when it's 3-1, right? You said, how we're starting to lose the game. And they say, guys, calm down. We're okay. We're going to be all right. Just, guys that have been there before. And if you get more, we need more than just Jason Zucker. You need a few of those players in here, right? That understand that they've been through the wars of this league for many, many years and just can kind of settle. Because the talent is there to get to where we want to be, which is where, Matt? Are we expecting this team to be a Stanley Cup contender right now? No. Are we expecting this team to be a playoff contender? Yes. But the disappointment this year is that we're not at, let's say, 55 points right now, 54. We're at 43. That's not that big, 45. That's not a massive difference, but it's very disappointing, right? Like if we're in the cluster with the Islanders and the Red Wings right now, 55, 53, we're not as incredibly negative right now about this team, right? So it's just those little things matter, right? And that's where the Sabres got to get that right. And that is on Adams because those things are very flexible to me.
Let me ask you this then. So if the Sabres are closer to a playoff spot right now, do you think Adams is more likely to pull off like a Pettersson deal that kind of adds that extra piece and really gets that deal done rather than sitting in the basement in the Eastern Conference? Or do you think that it's kind of it's inexcusable either way, malpractice either way?
I do think unless there are real issues with a player, like for example, like a Jack Eichel. Okay, we all know how fragmented that relationship was between Eichel and the Sabres front office, right? To get to that point where he was available, I think it's a really hard ask in this league right now with no movement clauses, right? With the cap being tight as of this moment, general managers to trade their number one center. Those are gold. They're very hard to get, right? And it's almost like trying to get like a quarterback in the NFL. I'm maybe not that strong, but you understand what I'm trying to say? Like,
yeah,
you don't see. It's very rare to see a quarterback almost would Josh Allen be a free agent right now? You know how many teams would line up for him right now? It'd be 30 of them.
30,
go
31.
Crazy.
31 teams.
Right? So once, elite one centers like Elias Pettersson don't become possibly available very often. right? It's usually a center that's maybe has baggage or maybe some injury history or a higher contract than maybe he's producing, right? So it's a tough ask. I mean, but again, I think we're upset with Adams because of all the other things that he hasn't done. Like we could have brought a Patrick Lonnie in this year, right? That like we left that cap space on the table when we got rid of Jeff Skinner, and I think we were all expecting that the Sabres were going to try to do something to supplement that, right? And they started it with Zucker, but he didn't. Felt like he didn't finish, and I think that's what left us frustrated. Like if the Sabres would have spent to the cap this year, right, Matt, and if they made some good solid moves in the offseason with, and they did make some solid moves. I like the Lafferty move. I like the Malmstein move. Those things were fine. They were not bad moves on the surface, right? I mean, but what if they did more and it just didn't work? Then we can say, okay, at least they're trying, right? At least there's an effort there. And I feel like we feel with this empty cap space, it's like, well, are you really trying to win? Like, what are you trying to do? Like, and I think that's what leads us. That's what leads us to these, and then the way Kevin Adams answers the questions. On top of that, to boot, if he was more like Brandon Bean, would we be as upset right now? I mean, we'd still be upset, but I think it'd be a little bit different. I think it would. I think that one press conference to me should have been the death nail for him as a GM with the Sabres. But
I would agree, and I do think what it sounds to me off of based off my question is that I truly do like I feel it's malpractice like as an NHL GM to whether you're in a playoff position or you're not, especially with anybody like a Pettersson being available. We don't know who else is available. We don't know what trade pieces are available right now or anything like that because teams are still trying to bump up and then for Kevin Adams to literally sit there and say that we're gonna be buyers at the deadline and then not get things done in Vancouver. Give me a break. Like at this point, it's malpractice as a general manager, and he needs to be. The Sabres need to go in a different direction. I don't care if they let him go over those, over the break, and let Kermanos take over for a couple weeks, through the deadline and see if he can't see what he can do to potentially make this team better. I just don't trust that Adams is going to make the team better through next year.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Do we want him to be the architect of this team if, let's say, we get a number 1 overall pick next year, right? Do we want him making that pick? Do we want him kicking off another sort of era with the Sabres, right? And we're going to get more into the draft as we get closer. We have plenty of time for that, right? So we'll definitely – I'm starting to kind of dip in and kind of look at some of these top prospects and things like that because what else do we really have at this point? I mean, even though the Sabres did have a good week this week, right, on the ice, which was nice and encouraging, and we're still hoping – I'm not really rooting for a tank, Matt. This team needs to win hockey games.
Well, and that's the thing. This isn't a tank. This isn't a tank. Yeah. This is just the team fucking sucks. Like, and excuse my language, but this team fucking sucks.
It's okay. I mean, they could do both right now, Matt. They could peel off a couple pieces if they want to, like Yoki Haru and maybe even a Greenway if you don't think you're going to bring him back. I mean, and then you could also buy at the same time. You could do both. Could be true, right? They don't have to. Trading as Jason Zucker for a 3rd round pick to me does nothing. Like you might as well keep the guy. He wants to be here. He likes being here. It's not easy finding players that really want to be here. So sign him for 2 years. Go ahead, knock yourself out. We got cap space galore. Use it, utilize it. Just send a message that hey, we're committed to you and we want you to stay here and help these young guys out. I mean, I'm good with that, right? But you could do both. But the franchise it needs a shot, Matt. It's like imagine what. Like even like you said, we talked about Patrick Kane or something like that. Imagine what that would do. At least it would like say, "Ooh, Sabres got Patrick Kane. Oh, let's go check them out. Let's go watch them." I mean, I would love to see the ratings right now. I mean, would you?
I mean,
I couldn't even imagine what they're like right now.
I mean, like I say it all the time on the show is, if we did not do this show every Saturday, I would not be watching Sabres games. I would have tuned in last night for Rob Ray's thing and probably shut the game off. But it's just disheartening at this point because
it is.
We literally sit here and talk about it. We talked about it at the beginning of the year when we started this show. that the Sabres, they were in a great position. They look good, and it's almost like that. Oh man, I don't even know what to say.
I know what you mean. You know what, Matt? I really feel it in your voice, and you're a passionate fan of this team. You're a passionate fan of Buffalo sports, right? And I sense it. I think you speak for all of our fans, right? And I feel it too. Believe me. I mean, sometimes I sit here. I'm sitting here watching the game. The game's here a little bit earlier, so it's nicer on the West Coast, man. I'm done with the Sabres by 7 o'clock, so at least I don't have to watch till 10, 11, 12. So there's a positive for any Sabre fan out there. You want to feel better? Move out west, and you'll feel better watching this team. But I'm still sitting here, and I'm trying to find the silver lining and everything. We got 3 games coming up this week. Again, it's really not about monitoring the standings at this point. I'm monitoring progress, consistency. Who are going to be the guys next year and going forward, right? And Kulik looks like one of those guys. So that's all right. Let's put that in the good bin. Okay, that's good, right? We still got Dahlin, right? We still got Tage Thompson. We still got good things on this roster. There's still positives, but there's just still some questions. What are we doing with Bowen Byram? Are we keeping him long term? Are we moving off Dylan Cousins? I mean, Dylan Cousins, something's got to give there with Dylan Cousins, and I still think he could be a very good player in this league, but it's just not working here. And something's got to give.
I listened to some of what Kevin Adams said yesterday on his show with Chopin Bulldog, and that's where the whole thing about him being a buyer at the deadline. But he also said, I want to make a hockey trade. Okay. What's a hockey trade? Like, I'm legitimately asking you. Like, I get your 1-for-1. I know what a hockey trade is, but truly, what is a hockey trade? Like, is it the simple fact that you're trying to make each other better, and this guy isn't working here? I think this guy will work here. You think this guy will work here, and let's swap them. Okay, cool. That's a hockey trade. But guess what? There's also other types of hockey trades out there. What the Rangers did last night with JT Miller, that's a hockey trade. That's literally the Rangers say, or the Vancouver Canucks saying, we like these guys that are prospects. We're gonna take some of these guys on here and see what they can do and try and rebuild our team with these guys. I know they got Chittle, or however you say his name.
Heedle. Heedle. Yeah.
Heedle.
I only know because I got a lot of buddies that are Ranger fans, so I'm really tuned into the Rangers.
they acquire him and some other pieces and a protected first round pick. That's as much of a hockey trade as a 1-for-1 deal. So what are we doing here? Great, you want to make a hockey trade, but what does that mean to you, Kevin Adams? What does a hockey trade do? Because a hockey trade literally is also, I'm going to make my team better, and whether that's trying to fleece you or make a fair trade. Not everything is going to be a fair trade. Technically the Eichel trade wasn't a fair trade. I'm sorry. Nope. Eichel's gotten a Stanley Cup already. Alex Tuck and Peyton Krebs and whatever hasn't done anything here in the NHL that really helps the Sabres get over that hump to even make the playoffs. So I'm going to say that that Jack Eichel deal, that's a win. That was a win for Vegas. That was a win on their side. So that's another deal that that was a hockey trade for them. They could have viewed that as a hockey trade, and because they got the better piece in that deal. And we're sitting here still trying to find, that top line center where, everybody thought it was going to be Tage Thompson. They moved Lindy Ruff's it seems like he got sick of his defensive stuff and not being able to play defense. So he moved into the wing where he's going to be, better off on the wing. So great. Yep. We still don't have a 1C. So what are we doing? What are we doing?
I mean, that's the thing, even with Dylan Cousins. I feel like Dylan Cousins, and the other thing too, we got to remember, money changes people, right? And say what you want. This guy's 22, 23 years old. He gets a $7 million contract, right? And I know what the Sabres are trying to do, right? They're trying to save on the taxes, right? It's like what Brandon Beane did with Ed Oliver, right? Sometimes you gotta you sign someone, you anticipate what they could be, right? And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, right? And with Dylan Cousins, I feel like they've wanted him to become more of a physical guy, right? And then but then he's got a lot of skill. And I feel like he's sort of all mucked in the middle, right? He doesn't have and maybe he's just not comfortable, and maybe they need to put him in the press box for a couple games. Say, listen, just take some time off. You know what I mean? We know you're talented. We know what you can do. We know what Dylan Cousins is capable of, right? And you see him in the junior tournaments; he tears it up when he plays with other players, right? So it's there, like something's there, but maybe it's just a mental thing with him right now, and he's, and it's hard to say what's going on. Maybe I'm reaching, but.
No, and it's not necessarily that you're reaching or anything like that, because I watched something yesterday, and it was just something that came across on my Twitter for as you're sitting there scrolling, trying to avoid Kansas City, Philadelphia Eagles stuff for the Super Bowl. You're just scrolling through stuff on Twitter.
What's the Super Bowl? I never heard of this.
Hashtag boycott Super Bowl. But in all seriousness, I came across a video from in the mid '90s. It was Michael Jordan and Charles Barkley on the Oprah Show. And Michael Jordan, I think, said it best. When you pay these guys, you're paying these guys now on potential. You're not paying them on what they've done. So whether that they've done, and he said that I highly recommend going and watching it, because it's an amazing interview. And for being as good of how good of a basketball player he was, and how shitty of a GM he was, and whatever, he speaks very eloquently on the mindset of being that young player that he was, and what other players were. And he said it perfectly. He said he got paid off of what he had done, because he had to come in and prove himself and show that he was going to be this super mega superstar, greatest of all time type player. But it's not just him. He did it. Charles Barkley had to do it. Karl Malone, John Stockton, and he named off a bunch of these players that, he's like, we all had to prove it. Now you're playing players on the potential, and if they get the money and they get comfortable, they're not going to go out and work for it. So when it comes, with Dylan Cousins, if he's not going to go out and work for it, the Sabres paid him on their trajectory of him going like this, and he got that contract, and then all of a sudden he's plateaued and then started going back down. And whether it's because of work ethic, whether it's because of whatever, who knows? He's still owed that contract, unless the Sabres buy him out, which they're not going to do, which is the dumbest thing in the world if they were to do. And I don't think that they. So in no means should anybody take this that I'm saying buy out Dylan Cousins' contract. No, he has value around the league. Trade him. Yeah. Use him as a piece to move something into more, something that's going to either add to the team, or that's going to put something in your kitty so you can go and go acquire something bigger, right? So that's kind of where I sit with Dylan Cousins is I don't think that he's going to fix himself on the Buffalo Sabres. I think he needs to be in a different organization. I think maybe potentially, and that's why I thought that Vancouver was a great spot for him. He goes closer to back home. He's able to go, be in Canada and play with players that, are where he might be able to flourish and turn his career back around and everything like that. But now it's, what are you going to trade him for first?
Hey, the last time Kevin Adams in my mind was not afraid to make a trade. Remember Matthew Savoy, top 10 pick?
Yeah, this year.
I mean, he's got 31 points with the Bakersfield Condors. I love that name, by the way. They're over here in California. I mean, he's got 39 games, 31 points. There's a little something for you. But we got Ryan McLeod. And I remember at the time there were Sabre fans kind of criticizing Adams for it. But McLeod is a guy that we could have on this team for the next several years. He's a borderline second, third center. He's got elite speed. He does all the things. Like, why be afraid to trade one of those guys? And look, it's actually turned out pretty okay. Like, even if Matthew Savoy goes and becomes a great player, right? The Sabres have those kind of guys in spades. Like, they have those kind of players. So why not just trade one? If he turns out great with Edmonton, so be it, right? I'm not going to lose sleep over it because of the player we got. And Kevin has to kind of feel the same way. Like, Isaac Rosen playing very well for Rochester. Don't be afraid to trade him. If you package him and Cousins and get a top number one center, like we mentioned Robert Thomas just now, right? Or whoever, right? What's the problem?
Well,
right? We're getting a point, that's
yeah.
You got to try. You got to and here's the thing. The Sabres still have excellent prospects in the pipeline. We got that guy Consta Hellenius that we took this year. Yeah. He could be a future, but he's only 18 years old. But you know what I'm trying to say. And we're going to get a pick this year, maybe in the 2025 draft.
Well, and it comes
that
down
could be top notch. So why are we worried about trading these prospects right now?
It comes down to it. Like you're not wrong. Like Isaac Rosen, is playing very well in the AHL. Who else played very, very well in the AHL in the last couple of years for the Sabres?
Leak.
And how long did it take him to kind of come up and start learning the NHL game? In 2 years. Mm-hmm. This team doesn't have another 2 years to bring up Rosen next year and learn the speed of the NHL and everything like that. And, it truly is – hockey is so much different. Like, and this is the one very strong difference between NFL and NHL. You draft these kids at 18 years old. They go to juniors, they go to college, they go to AHL, they go to minor leagues, they do whatever.
Mm-hmm.
They have all this, talent, or they have all this, time to kind of succeed before even getting onto this team. Whereas in the NFL, you're drafted at 2022, or you're drafted at 21, 22 years old, and you're expected to come right in and learn the game. And I think that a little bit more of that needs to happen in the NHL, because then you'll learn that the player itself, whether he's going to, look at Zach Benson. Everybody's like, who's thinking that he's going to flourish in the NHL at 18 years old, as a 13th overall pick. Nobody. But he came in and he's probably one of the best players on the Sabres team. So why not bring up Rosen and move a player off the team that and see what you have, and really take the rest of this year to, because if he doesn't show that he understands the pro game, package them together over the summer at the draft, or package them before the deadline, or whatever, and try and get something that's a proven NHL player at this point now.
Yep. Now, and listen, and this may be something that Sabre fans may not agree with me on. I still think, as much as I like Zach Benson, I still think he should be in Rochester. I think, and the reason I say that is, in Rochester, he's going to win a lot of games. He's going to keep developing, right? If you've got those veterans that we could have put in, and he's 19 years old. He's got time. Like, don't let him develop these habits of feeling like what it's like to lose all the time and things like that, right? But I understand why he's here, though, and I agree. He's got a lot of skills that coaches love. Lindy loves the guy.
Here's my
and
question.
Lindy doesn't always love young players.
I don't mean to. I don't mean to interrupt you, but no.
Sure.
Like, as far as the AHL goes, I know there's rules and things like that, and I'm not. I'd have to go look it up. But is Benson able to even go down to the AHL?
I'm not sure. We'd have to maybe verify with a chat or something like that for that. But I understand what you mean. Maybe there is something, and that could very well be the case. But that's just, I think the timing of the development of the Sabres is what's also hurting us too. Like, there's certain players that probably needed more seasoning down the minors. Maybe there should have been more bridge contracts on this team. Like, maybe I think because the Sabres were afraid of the cap being so tight with taxes, right? That's why we gave Owen Power 8 years. That's why we gave Dylan Cousins. Maybe because of what happened with Eichel and Reinhart, they were a little bit concerned about losing those guys. So they said, hey, we got to get these guys signed as soon as possible. But maybe that was just too much for Owen Power. Like, Owen Power, if he was making $5.5 million right now, Matt, okay, till 26, you know what kind of tradable asset he would be right now around the league? Teams would be falling over, but it would be a lot easier to trade. What if Dylan Cousins was making $5-something million right now? I'll tell you, he would be a lot easier to trade. I really, really believe that.
No, I do agree with you to a point. And I get it. But
yeah,
I mean, it's really, the way that they've built this team is really just like, here's the thing. Like, if, like, we ask it all the time, if the Sabres made the playoffs in 2022 when they missed it by a point, we're probably sitting here today and letting this stuff play out with Roseanne and Kulik and not worry because take it back to the Bills real quickly. 2017 they make the playoffs. They draft Josh Allen. Yes, we're sitting here being like, oh, it's Josh Allen, great. We picked a quarterback high. We're super high on him. But if they had gone, multiple different years, they let that play out. Fans of the Bills let that play out because they had made the playoffs in 2017. They're not being critical of, even though you got that certain sector of fans that's still critical of Bean and McDermott, which, you can be critical of them on certain things, but don't call for them to be fired. Like, you have the second winningest coach in all of professional sports coaching your team. And yes, they just can't get over that one hump. But like Brandon Bean said in the press conference the other day, just keep kicking doors down. And that's what they got to do. But it feels like Kevin Adams is just, standing on the other side of the door just, hello? Hello? But it truly feels like that he's not doing anything to improve the team. And had he gone out and made, I don't want to say a franchise-defining trade or anything like that in 2022, but if you go bring in something that's going to help you score and get you over that hump, we're not sitting here bitching that. We're not sitting here bitching that, we're in a 14-year playoff drought and Kevin Adams has not made the playoffs in his 5 years and he owns this playoff drought now and everything else. Because they had just made it 2 years ago and now, okay, cool, we didn't do that much, but we're gonna let him, build the team because we have a little bit of trust in him that the team he put on the ice made the playoffs.
Yep, and it changes the whole mood in the room, right? I mean, if you make the playoffs, then they're still saying we're still frustrated today, Matt. Like if we're in the same spot, we're still frustrated, but we're not as like, okay, we made the playoffs 2 years ago. Okay, all right, we know there's still something in there, but that making the playoffs could have changed the whole trajectory of how the outside world thinks of the Sabres and other players. Maybe they say, that team made the playoffs. Maybe I'll go in there. Maybe I'll consider signing with the Sabres. Maybe you know what I mean. So. Maybe we're in a different place right now, but I agree with you. It would have those questions. Tage Thompson would not have to be asked about the playoff drought. Dylan Cousins would not have to be asked about the playoff drought. It would still be, okay, you only made the playoffs once, but at least it's only a couple. You get that feeling of
you might not have
changes everything.
You might not have the losing culture that you have here because guess what? You made the playoffs. You technically won at the season because you made even though you didn't. Whether you win a playoff round or not, you're getting that valuable experience that you went through a playoff run at the end of the year. You made the playoffs and you played one or two series because I don't think that they're beating, who was it, the Boston Bruins at that time or whoever it was that they would have been playing. I don't think that they win that series or anything like that. But guess what? Maybe they win a game or two and learn, and maybe maybe last year isn't as bad of a year as it was. Yes, they had the injuries and things like that. You can't blame injuries, or you can't, get away from injuries and things like that. But maybe it's a better year. Maybe they don't make the playoffs, but maybe it's a better year. Maybe you are able to sign, players like you said, because they're going to be here. They see what's happening here and everything like that. Maybe it accelerates Devin Levi's development because he now went through a playoff series as your number one goaltender. Because he's playing better than UPL, and who knows? There's a lot of things that could have happened. In a different timeline, Devin Levi is already the starting goaltender of the Buffalo Sabres, and they don't have a playoff drought right now. And it just there's a whole line of things that kind of goes through it, and we sit here and talk about it, and it's just something has to be done. And the last thing I'm going to say on this with Kevin Adams for today, until he does something stupid this week, all I'm asking is just go out there and do something to improve this team. Oh, I totally go out and fight Kevin Adams at this point right now.
Listen,
no,
Whittle, we need you to come in and help us with that too. So we'll take on our GM.
In all seriousness, though, go do something. Go try and improve this team the best you can, and set yourself up, because you're clearly not going to lose your job because you are nothing but a yes man, and this team is built like you are, soft and can't close. So do something that's going to change that narrative itself, and going into next year, and put the player, let Lindy Ruff get his own guys in here as far as coaches go, so he can improve what you're giving him or not giving him, and move forward with that, and improve this team to a point where you give yourself a shot to make the playoffs next year.
Yeah. And listen, hey, we got Whittle on our side, so we have plenty of options here. We'll bring you in as an enforcer, brother. We definitely will.
All you got to do is skate towards him and hit the player. You don't have to back skate at that point. The boards will stop you.
Yep. Hey, and the last thing I'll say about the Sabres is, hey, so Terry doesn't have the Bills distracting him right now, at least for a little while. So now's the time for him to turn his attention to the Buffalo Sabres, and he was there last night. By the way, it was nice to see Kim Pagula at the game last night.
It was.
She still obviously, they said that she can understand things, but maybe, actually communicating still a challenge for her, but it was just good to see her in the press box last night for that. So, but, it's just time, again, just with Terry Pagula, nobody's questioning your passion for the Sabres. I actually think he's more passionate about the Sabres than he is about the Bills. I've always felt that way. I don't know if you feel that way.
I think that's the issue. I truly do think that's the issue, because he's a fan of the Buffalo Sabres. He wants this team to succeed in any way, shape, or form. But also, too, I think that if it was my team, I'd be trying to do whatever I could to make sure that there's a product on the ice that's not only going to make me money, but also make the playoffs and be good in everything else. They're not doing either. They're not doing anything. So I mean, and I want to touch on your one point about Terry Pagula and last night. I'm so glad. I was actually upset to see Kevin Adams on the ice. I'm not, during Rob Ray's thing. I did not want to see him out there, and I'm glad they didn't allow him to speak. And I'm so happy that they did not allow Terry Pagula on, or not allow him, but I'm glad he made the decision to not go out there and present whatever to Rob Ray for that, because or speak or anything like that, because you don't want the booze or anything like that ruining.
Oh, they would have been raining down last night.
It would have ruined that night. It literally almost, if it wasn't RJ and if it wasn't Miller, when Terry Pagula came out and talked on both of them, he got met with crazy amounts of booze. And it kind of put a damper a little bit on both those nights. So stay away. You're a shitty owner right now until you change that narrative of the Buffalo Sabres. You're a shitty owner of the Buffalo Sabres until you change that narrative. So stay off the ice and allow these things that you put all this money into to happen naturally how they did. But moving away from that, I'll let you finish your thought, and then we'll get into what's going on this week for the Sabres.
No, but that's really about it. So we really just have to see what happens in the next few weeks. I mean, we're going to have the Four Nations tournament, so there will be a break. I mean, maybe we're seeing a lot of action in NHL right now. Again, because of that announcement of the salary cap and how much it's going up. Obviously, the TV money is kicking in, so that's going to give teams a lot more flexibility. I mean, so just to go with those numbers, next year it's going to be 95.5. 2026 is going to 104, and then 27-28 it's going to 113. So that's a pretty significant jump in the NHL. Now I know if you're a football fan, you're like, oh, that's not much, but for the NHL, that's quite a bit. So it's going to give. There really should be no limitations as far as the Sabres taking money back, but or anything like that. I mean, it should make it easier for the Sabres to make a trade. You would think, right? But we're going to find out how that goes in the near future.
So
but
we have go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. And that's really all I had on that. So
so we have a we have a Bills game tomorrow. Buffalo versus New Jersey Jets. No, I'm only kidding. We have tomorrow at 1 p.m. We have the Buffalo Sabres and the New Jersey Devils, which should be that might be a 5-1, 6-1 type game. Who knows what's going to happen there?
Well, the Devils have some injuries right now, so that they don't have their goalie. The Markstrom's out, so we'll see how that goes. So there could be a lot of goals in that game potentially, but again, I'm looking again. The thing I'm looking for, Matt, is consistency. I mean, those are the things that we want to see from this team on that front. So we had a good question in the chat about, is there a trade pause during Four Nations in the NHL? I am trying to verify that. I don't believe so. Let's see. The rest of the NHL will be paused. Trades and roster moves can still happen during the tournament, but teams would like to have the time completely off. So it's kind of like optional, I would say, at this point. Tuckiad, I love that name, by the way. I always have. So, but that's where we're at with that in terms of that. So, yeah, Kevin Adams could, instead of maybe sitting back and having some Tim Hortons or something, maybe he could make a trade. He can stun us all during Four Nations and make a. But what's going to be interesting is, would players that are in the Four Nations, could you imagine, like if Elias Pettersson was in the Four Nations? Although I'm not. Wait, he's Swedish, right? So he probably is in the Four Nations. Do you imagine? He's going for like the gold medal. Oh, sorry, you've been traded to Buffalo. So I don't know if that's going to happen during that tournament.
Right.
So probably not likely on that.
I don't expect to see any trades during there. I know that there's no freeze, but I could expect talks and maybe parameters of deals happening during the and then them happening right afterwards, leading up to the trade deadline. But I don't expect to see movement really during the tournament itself. So, but moving on from that, Sabres 45 points. 51 games. They are 12 points out of the wild card. So essentially, season is, I don't want to say over, because you never know, something could happen. Injuries could happen to teams ahead of you.
Zombie apocalypse, things like that, man.
Knock on wood, or anything. There could be another pandemic, and they could have like a 25-team tournament again. But I'm only,
and we still couldn't make the tour. We still couldn't make the playoffs that year.
But anyways, in all seriousness, though, I for lack of them putting together like a 10-game win streak, 13-game win streak, they're not making the playoffs. But you never know. Something could change. Something could happen. There could be a player out of left field that we nobody ever thought would be on the Sabres. Could come in and they could, things could change, turn around. UPL could go back to UPL from last year and start standing on his head a little bit more and, willing, this team into a playoff spot. You never know. I mean, you're talking, because you're only technically 6 wins out of a playoff spot. So if you have the teams that ahead of you lose, it could always, quickly turn around. But again, who knows?
Hey, Matt, I'll give you a what I would realistically like to see the rest of the way. A trade for a top 6 forward, and let's say we got 32 games left. All right, let's go 31. So 18. Let's say 18 and 13, whatever way you want to say. A little bit over 500. I mean, obviously, at least it would be a nice direction. At least we're seeing some positivity. And if we add another player to this roster, at least we'll have some things to kind of dive into for the offseason. So that's kind of where my headspace is with the Sabres right now is, again, if those 31 games, we're going to make the playoffs. We're going to have to go like 25-6. I mean, that's really the only shot. Mm-hmm. That gives us 50 points. That gives us 95. I mean, that's right. You really have to go 24. I mean, this team is not built to cook at 24-7. Like, I'm sorry, they're just not. So, if it was like 20-10, all right, I could see that. 20-10, maybe 19-11 or something like that. But they're not built for that. They have no.
That's what. That's because they're at 45 points right now. Let's be honest. I think probably 90 gets you in this year, just the way that teams are this year.
Yeah, maybe. Some of these teams are cooking, though.
88 to 92, I think, gets you in the playoffs. We can update that at the end of the year when we take a look at that. But, if the Sabres go, let's say, 25-5, that puts them at 90 points. That gets them right there. But I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that's happening. Trust me, this team is not built for that. But what I want to see for the rest of the way is I'd like to see them get to at 500. So technically, right now they are 20-29 with the 5 loser points or 5 loser games. I would like to see them, get that to around 500, maybe a game or two ahead of 500 to kind of end the season. However, they have to do that, make up those 9 games, so that kind of does put you at what? That puts you at what? 20 and 10? 20 and 10? So
it's a big ask, but again,
but I would like to see them
nice positive finish. A nice positive finish with a trade of significance. I would quote settle for that now. At least something to go off of going forward to the offseason.
So, and real quickly, this week we do have the Devils tomorrow. We are at home. We have the Hot Blue Jackets coming in on Tuesday at home at 7. The game tomorrow is 1 p.m. And then Sabres Predators before the Four Nation Freeze next week. So before our show next Saturday morning, we have 2 games, and then Saturday night we have another game at 8 p.m. against these Predators in Nashville. With that being said, Brian, it's always a pleasure doing this with you.
Always a pleasure. Yep.
Always a pleasure doing this with you.
Hey, all I'm going to say is this, Matt. When that day comes, hopefully, and the Sabres start cooking, okay, I want everybody on this show and everybody listening to say, remember when Matt and Beyond were doing those shows in the depth of the worst time in this thing? We'll be rewarded, Matt. Us, we've had Chad on. We'll all be rewarded for putting up with these shenanigans as long as we have. So,
I don't know, man.
We will.
I'm hoping so. I'm hoping that Kevin Adams reward us. But hey, Brian, as always.
For the best Italian food in Western New York, Elliot Apollos, call 716-825-3675. The Lardon Construction Group.
Fubo TV, the official streaming service of Do Champions. FanDuel, the official sportsbook of Do Champions.
For all your summertime needs, beauty pools, as well as kayak pools.
CX Chronicles, your total customer solutions focused manager. W.GG, the official energy drink of Do Champions.
Hey, Sons of Erie, our artwork looks better on your walls. Hamburg Brewing, please visit our tap room on Boston State Road, Hamburg, New York. And finally,
Fat Boy Surf Club for all your surfing needs.